Let me get serious, okay?
Yeah, that was correct. That was, he said, here's your option.
Yes.
Amy, could you do a roll call? Call to order, establish a quorum for the City of Perkins regular meeting, Tuesday, September 12th, 2023, 6 p.m.
Okay. Mayor?
Yes?
Vice Mayor?
Yes.
Sarah? Yes. Jason?
Yes, ma'am.
And Justin is absent.
Please stand with me and pray. Father, we come to you tonight. We just thank you for the opportunity to come together again as a team, the opportunity to come together and make those decisions that we can for our city. Thank you for our city, and I pray your hedge of protection over our citizens and all of our city staff. Father, just bless us with your wisdom and help us make the best decisions we can for our city. In Jesus' precious name, amen. All right, we have some special guests tonight for to lead the Pledge of Allegiance from the Perkins Trine FFA, President Brady Perry and Vice President Lana Smith. We're so glad to have you.
You guys please remain standing.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right here.
Thank you.
Right here. Thank you for coming, and we appreciate it so much.
Thank you.
It's an honor to have you.
Thank you for having us.
Tell Mr. Brunker we said hi. Item agenda number 4, consideration and action on consent agenda. Commissioners, do you have anything that you'd like to pull out or discuss?
I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Second?
Mayor?
Yes.
Vice Mayor?
Yes.
And Jason?
Yes, ma'am.
And Sarah?
Yes.
Number 5 will be no action and pass. Number 6, public appearances, petitions, communications, and personal appearances. Under Oklahoma law, the city commission members are prohibited from discussing or taking any action on items that are not on today's agenda. Okay. Number 7, presentation by University of Oklahoma Associate Professor Sarah Little, PhD, PLA, regarding a City of Perkins active transportation plan.
Can we come back to that?
Sure can.
Yeah, I'm having technical difficulties. I've got the manual downloaded.
Okay.
We'll see. I'm
So-
working on it.
We'll just move on to number 8, okay? And we'll just make our way back around. Number 8, consideration, discussion, and possible action to approve ordinance 494, an ordinance amending Perkins City Code Section 6-13-19, motor scooters, and declaring an emergency.
That's it. State law has motor scooters under 50 cc's that are legal to be driven on the road in certain instances, and we've had some issue with it, so this ordinance would make it not legal in the city unless they were licensed and had insurance.
So we have some younger,
Well, no, it's older people that don't have a license or don't have insurance that'll end up crashing into somebody. This would give us some teeth to issue citations for no insurance or no valid driver's license.
commissioners?
Is the recorder on up
Commissioners, any questions? Anything?
So,
Make a motion to approve ordinance 494, an ordinance amending Perkins City Code Section 6-13-19, motor scooters, and declaring an emergency.
I second.
Mayor?
Yes.
Vice Mayor?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Jason?
yes, ma'am.
Number 9, consideration, discussion, and possible action on declaring an emergency on ordinance 494. Let's discuss it now.
Make a motion to declare an emergency on ordinance number 494.
I'll second.
Mayor,
Yes.
Vice Mayor,
Yes.
Sarah? Yes. Jason?
Yes.
Number 10, consideration, discussion, and possible action to approve Resolution 10-2023, a resolution authorizing participation in the OMAG recognition program.
You guys may feel this is a little backward, it is, but it is the way OMAG has structured their program. They want you to go through the counseling, do the counseling, that didn't sound right, go through the education.
Counseling's good.
It was counseling with David Weatherford. Go through the declarations page of your insurance policy, all of the things that they require, do the stability test, which you've all done. And then pass a resolution saying you're going to do it, or that you have done it. The resolution is just the step that's necessary to get recognition as having participated in the program. And to the extent they're going to give you any money this year, which we never did figure out, it's what would trigger getting money for completing it. Any questions about the resolution?
Kind of went through it Sarah and Jason did. Kind of went through it last year, same type thing, didn't we? Okay. I make a motion that we approve Resolution 10-2023, a resolution authorizing participation in the OMAG recognition program.
Second. Mayor,
Yes.
Vice Mayor,
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes, ma'am.
You slid that one right in there. I mean, you beat her.
You did.
Sweet.
Fair and square.
Sweet. We need some levity in here. Okay, number 11. Consideration, discussion, and possible action to approve interlocal agreement with the town of Kearney, Oklahoma regarding the transfer and use of 2013 Ford Taurus Interceptor police vehicle VIN number ending in 8033.
This agreement would essentially allow us to donate a vehicle.
Matt, start over.
Just go ahead and say it.
She's like the teacher with the ruler on it.
Sorry. Go ahead. Okay, he would really like to assist the city of Kearney, a small town, by letting them use our police vehicles, these two old police vehicles. You are not allowed to donate to anybody. It's odd with city property. So the way that this is done in other cities as well is we do an interlocal agreement where we say you can use it, but we want it back. If we need to use it for an emergency, you're going to come over and help us, and we'll do mutual assistance. And then that way they have the ability to use a vehicle that we would have difficulty. If you do not approve this, then he has to park these vehicles out, take all of the police equipment off of it, park them out, and it costs as much time and energy as this and money as this interlocal government agreement will. So that's why this is structured the way it is.
And then if you took all those parts out, then you really can't reuse it. It's hard to get rid
Sell
of.
them separately.
Okay.
It actually lets it be useful.
I make a motion to approve the interlocal agreement with the town of Kearney, Oklahoma regarding the transfer and use of the 2013 Ford Taurus Interceptor police vehicle VIN number ending in 8033.
That's the second.
She got it.
Mayor,
Yes.
Vice Mayor?
Yes.
Sarah? Yes. Jason?
Yes, ma'am.
Number 12, consideration, discussion, and possible action to approve interlocal agreement with the town of Kearney, Oklahoma regarding the transfer and use of 2014 Ford Taurus Interceptor police vehicle VIN number ending in 2529.
Second vehicle, same thing.
Make a motion to approve the interlocal agreement with the town of Kearney, Oklahoma regarding the transfer and use of the 2014 Ford Taurus Interceptor police vehicle VIN number 2529.
Second. Y'all gotta keep up with me tonight.
Mayor?
I'm gonna let you have it.
Yes, I know you were. I knew you were.
Yes. Sarah?
I knew you were just waiting.
Jason?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm ready.
We're ready, okay.
Perseverance.
Is it okay if we, let me reread it, okay?
Yeah, of course.
The agenda item. Is that good, Tammy? Yeah, we go
Yes.
back to number 7 right now? Okay, we're gonna revisit, agenda item number 7. Oh, my Lanta.
Is that, oh, sorry.
You're fine.
You might
I can
want
do
to
it.
put back on for a
I
minute.
can do it. I'm old, but I can do it. Spencer. Presentation by University of Oklahoma Associate Professor Sarah Little, PhD, ELA, regarding a City of Perkins active transportation plan. All right, Ms. Little, go ahead.
It's good to see you again. Oh,
It's good to see you again, too.
Yeah.
That was a fun evening, by the way.
It was.
Thank you.
The students had a ball. So I'm so happy to be here tonight to present my students' work for you. I apologize, it's kind of skewed, but it's projecting, so I'm not gonna get too hung up on the fact that it's not perfect. But I hope that the information will be really good for you guys tonight. Do you mind getting the lights? Thanks. So we'll see. Yeah, here we go. Wow, this is, I apologize. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is the process, how the active transportation plan evolved. And then in February of this year, we administered a survey to residents with the help of Bob Ernst. And then I want to go over those results, a really brief SWOT analysis, and then the Activate Perkins Active Transportation Plan. And so everything above this line fulfills the proposal, the agreement that you have with the Institute for Quality Communities at the University of Oklahoma. Everything below the line is just icing on the cake. So this was just such a great opportunity to work with residents of Perkins that I opened it up to my students to do other projects. We have 2 projects that won awards from the Oklahoma chapter of ASLA, so that's really exciting. And I'll share one of those with you tonight. So it's always good to start on the same page. Landscape architecture is really a small field. Not a lot of people know what we do. And so I always take advantage of these opportunities to explain what we do as landscape architects. So I'm going to read this. Landscape architects create outdoor spaces like parks, city squares that provide everyone the opportunity to connect and interact with their community. We listen to the needs of community members and ensure that every voice is heard. And we use our expertise to design resilient public spaces that are accessible to people of all ages, incomes, and abilities. And it's really exciting this summer. We just received STEM designation, so we are technically in science, technology, engineering, and math discipline. And so this is the process that brought us here. In May of last year, Bob submitted a proposal to the Institute for Quality Communities, IQC, asking for an active transportation plan. As a faculty, we get together and review those proposals, and I picked this one because I thought it was just such an incredible opportunity. In the fall of last year, regional and city planning students worked with the town to start the process of developing the master plan. And then this past spring, the project got passed to us in landscape architecture, and we began the design work of all of this. February the 16th, we had a community engagement event. My students had such a ball here. Mrs. Sasser's antique shop, her bottom line shot up that day. She was open, my students descended on her. We just had such a great time, such a warm welcome. And then the community engagement event, landscape architecture students from OU and OSU. And then the following day, on February 17th, we did what's called a charrette, which in the design world is just a fancy name for a really intense workshop. where we came up with some designs for other projects within the city. And then in May of this year, we wrapped it up. I've had a student working on the document over the summer, so that's coming. You'll have nice professionally printed copies of it, and then you'll have digital copies as well. Okay, so we had 72 responses from the survey that was distributed in February, and it was only out for like 2 weeks, so I was tickled with that kind of response. And the majority of the people who responded to the survey lived in the town limits. So we had 58 and 14 lived outside. Most worked beyond a 5-mile radius of Perkins, so there's 34 respondents. So that kind of like gives credence to Perkins as kind of a bedroom community. People sleep here but may not work here. But then we had 21 respondents to say they actually worked within the city limits, so that was kind of interesting. And then the survey really skewed on the younger side. at my age, this is still on the younger side, right? But basically between 25 and 50 years old, we have 47 respondents. This age range was broken up into 3 separate smaller ranges, and they were pretty much evenly distributed. We heard, so we asked the questions, what do you like about Perkins? People said friendly people, a lot of small, the small town sense of community, the slow pace, people working together. It's a close-knit small town, it's quiet. You have really good restaurants here. My students really enjoyed those, and also quiet town. So all of these responses, in my mind, kind of paint this stereotypical picture of this like small community where everyone's really close. Then we asked, what are things you think that Perkins needs to improve? So infrastructure came up a lot of language about roads and sidewalks. Again, the bedroom community, people tend to sleep here but not work here, and that there was an increased investment needed in parks and gathering places. This respondent talked a lot about trash along the highways and vacant lots, and how that was kind of in conflict with this kind of small town, close-knit community that Perkins is, and they felt very dissatisfied by this. And then this, stickers in the park. When I read that, I thought there was some kind of vandal going around the park, like putting stickers on all the hard surfaces, like some kind of Lisa Frank vandal. But then in January, my husband and I came up to tour, and it was like the first warm day after winter. Oh my God, it was beautiful. Everyone was in the parks, people were on the sidewalk along Kirk. And so we started our tour in Peters Park. And so we were walking around, I was taking pictures, I was down in the ditch, and then I got in the car and I looked at my pants and I'm like, oh, stickers, right? So I know what that means now. And then we asked, in your free time, what types of activities do you enjoy outdoor in Perkins? So a lot of sporting events, and that's what I saw in January. A lot of the ball fields just really heavily used. Fishing in the Cimarron, children's athletics, walking, parks, riding bikes, walking dogs, walking, running, added sidewalks in certain areas would be a huge benefit. And so in thinking of the survey results, and that's just a little bit, in the interest of time, and thinking of the survey results, our observations, our interactions with the community when we were in town, we came up with this SWOT analysis, so strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So some of the strengths is the small town sense of community, right? You have generations of people living here, you form these connections. Proximity to Stillwater and the Cimarron River, and then Main Street. The Central Business District is really lovely. You still have a lot of historic buildings intact, and you've got really nice businesses, right? So that was definitely strengths. Weaknesses, from the survey, there was a lot of talk about infrastructure with roads and just needing more sidewalks, the fact that people live here but may not work here. And since budgets in Oklahoma come from sales tax revenue, that's a big issue. We observed some flooding and drainage issues, so the drainage ditch that pretty much goes from the high school to the river, flooding along Main Street, and gophers. Oh my gosh. There's so many gophers in the ball fields. Just what a maintenance nightmare. And then the stickers, of course. Some opportunities, I think this active transportation plan could really be a way for new residents to connect with old residents and give them entry into this strong sense of community that has developed here in Perkins. The Cimarron Research, it says, I think it's Cimarron Valley Research Station. I've labeled that incorrectly. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And then low impact development interventions, things like rain gardens, bioswales to address some of the drainage issues. And then some of the threats, this influx of new residents to the sense of community, they haven't been here for generations. New development doesn't really connect the way older development does. So if you look at your Main Street, you've got, your business district, the residents behind it, and then alleyways. Oh, I love alleyways. The new development seems to be really isolated and not connecting into the existing network of streets. And then looking at more economic development, and then disc golf. Because your current course, half of the holes are on private property, and there's not a formal agreement. So that could potentially be under threat. So this is the active transportation plan that my students came up with. And it's basically 3 loops. So the first one, you have the outer loop that goes down 33. Sorry, this is Sadler, I think. So my notes are on my computer. Sadler, and then from, is it Nipe? Nipe? From Nipe, there's a utility easement that goes to the river, and then along the river back up 77, and then around Dixon Park. You have the inner loop that is connecting residents to businesses in downtown, to parks and other destinations, to schools within the city. And then you have informal trails. So this mustard colored dash line here, this could be a shared bike lane on existing roads. And then this informal trail here could just give people another way to access the river. And these would be like mown trails. There wouldn't be anything, paved. So the goals here is to create opportunities for alternative transportation, walking, biking, skateboarding, whatever. And then to create leisure and recreational opportunities as well. And in the process, we did community engagement with the survey and then the input session we had in February. The students came multiple times over the course of the year to do site visits, and then spatial analysis using GIS. So looking at where existing sidewalks were, looking at where destinations were, and connecting all of those together. So the inner loop is 6 miles. And this is the one that's mainly in town here. So we've got West Freeman to East Kirk, Timberline down to Thomas to Nape, and then connecting around the middle school and Dixon Park as well. So the flavor of this would be something like this section here. So you would have 6-foot sidewalks on either side of the road. Traditionally, sidewalks are 4 feet. These would be really wide sidewalks. The reason we like 6 feet is if you're encountering people, right? You have enough room to pass without having to, go crazy. And then also having like a shared bike lane. And that could just be, something painted on the street here. So there's Pistol Pete on his bike. The outer loop is 7.3 miles. And so this becomes the periphery around town. 33 down to Sadler, this utility easement along the river, and then up 73 and around Dixon Park. So this would be more like a traditional greenway trail. It'd be 10 feet wide. And so that could accommodate directions in both ways, pedestrians and bicyclists as well. And then, parts like going down the river could be a boardwalk, so we're not, disrupting the riparian buffer. And then, also it could be like a boardwalk or even an asphalt trail through the woods. So the informal trail is taking advantage, which is 5.5 miles, taking advantage of informal paths, maybe just moon paths, and then shared bike lanes. So the first phase, if you do the inner loop, and that's adding the sidewalks, the very wide sidewalks, installing signage, and painting the shared lanes. So this would be the shared bike lanes within the inner loop, but also here as part of this informal trail. So that's about $4 million. Again, these sidewalks are super wide, so cutting those down. And these are estimated costs, so there's a reference material called RS Means, where it breaks down like cost of these things per like linear foot based in your region. Phase 2 would be looking at concentrating on the outer loop. So it's adding that 10-foot wide asphalt trail around the periphery of Perkins, installing signage, and then clearing spots here for these informal trails. And then that would be 3.5 million. And then phase 3 would be adding like the riverfront access. So it'd be the boardwalks down this utility easement and then along the riverfront. So that's, again, the 10-foot wide river walk and nature trail, and then installing signage. So, you know, one thing that was really intriguing during our community engagement event is this patch of woods along the Cimarron River. I think is home to like bald eagles and bobcats, and like, I would come here, right? Like, I would drive from Norman to come look at bald eagles. And so that's the end of the active transportation plan. And then the rest is just a really brief summary of some other projects that students worked on. So one opportunity I see for Perkins is potentially partnering with OSU at the Cimarron Valley Research Center. So during the land run, there were tracts of like 640 acres set aside and it's owned by the Oklahoma Commission of the Land Office. And those are set aside for specific uses, whether it's research related, educational related. There's a special use lease that you can do for recreational opportunities. And so if you look at this site, here at the intersection of 77 and 33, this main kind of bold red line area is approximately 120 acres. So if any of you are familiar with the sports complex in Chickasha, that's about 200 acres. So, you know, this area right now is currently only used for pastures. Here, you know, there are more permanent installations like orchard and test plots. But if you could even capture this remaining 90 acres of test plots, that would get you really, you know, beyond that 200 acres. So the reason I'm bringing this up as an opportunity is, you know, with the sandy soil and the problem of gophers, maintaining the ball fields is a problem. You know, they're spread across town. If we can consolidate those, I think it would help make maintenance a little bit easier, right? That it's all in one place. And then, you know, you would have the room here to really develop a sports complex. You know, you would have to probably talk to OSU, but, you know, this is currently in the College of Agriculture, but, you know, you could bring in turf grass experts with the ball fields. You could bring in people from kinesiology or recreation and tourism, right? It could really, for OSU, expand their research capacity at this site. For you guys, it could definitely increase revenue and give you like a really interesting sports complex right here at the interest of town. In the meantime, another alternative would be, again, consolidating the ball fields to help with maintenance and having that be at Dixon Park. So this is one design option for Dixon. It takes in Roscoe Emerson Park here, because that is a really lovely piece of land. I mean, it has rolling hills, very mature trees. That's where you want to have a disc golf course, right? So if we could have the disc golf course relocated to Dixon and Roscoe Emerson, it would be really interesting. You would have all 18 holes on the same property. Then the road here kind of cuts off into a parking lot. And then the road here to the south also ends in a parking lot. So we would cut out that road that goes through here. By doing that, we're able to relocate the 2 T-ball fields that are currently at Peters Park. And really making this more of a destination, right? I mean, you gotta think about siblings who don't play sports. That was me. So, you know, having opportunities for like manufactured playgrounds, nature playgrounds, the disc golf, like this really becomes a destination on the edge of town. And then this is just kind of an extracted plan of the disc golf course. So it would start here right off of this parking lot with this first hole, and then it just kind of snakes around and terminates in Roscoe Emerson. It's kind of an interesting concept. This one is at Peters Park. So this was one that won the Oklahoma ASLA Merit Award for this year. Really interesting site. So taking the T-ball fields, right, relocating them at Dixon, and then that ditch, you know, like water is such a problem sometimes. But it really cuts the park in half and it prevents like using the full space. So if you could potentially take this culvert here that goes under Kirk and have some sort of like collection at the beginning, right? So all that water's gonna come in there, it's gonna slow it down. If there's any trash, it'd be a point of trash collection, and then it would spill over like a small dam into this flooded meadow. So instead of having this big ditch, what we would do is flatten it out and then have a small retaining, you know, some sort of retention on the sides. And so when you have big rain events, the rain will come in, it'll flood this meadow, and then with the sandy soil, right, it's gonna be gone within a day probably. And then what you have when it's not raining is you have like a multi-purpose field, right, where you could like throw the ball, fly a kite, without, you know, having to navigate around that really deep ditch. And then, you know, then you would have like a slower elevation coming down to go under timberline. So you wouldn't need to have, you know, such high banks.
So this design here, this idea won an award?
It did, from the Oklahoma chapter of the American Society of Landscape Architects. So it got a merit award for the design. And then this is a picture of what that could look like. So here you could have, you know, seating that would double as like a retaining wall. This is what it would look like when it was flooded, which it wouldn't be that way all year, right? But then think about how nice it would be to sit along this and like watch people play out in the multi-purpose field. So those are just 2 designs of many that are all in the booklet, but I didn't want to like overwhelm you and take up your whole meeting with this stuff. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Those are some big dreams. I like them.
So just to throw this out there, with the bipartisan infrastructure bill and the Inflation Reduction Act, there's a lot of money out there for these types of initiatives, potentially that drainage ditch. So I know ACOG has, pollution reduction grants out right now. And so, you know, looking at water quality with this drainage ditch, that would definitely count, you know, be eligible for those types of initiatives. So Bob and I have had conversations about how we can assist y'all in applying for funding to get some of this stuff on the ground.
That was my question. Do you have grant writers we can?
Yeah. So we do so much community engagement work. You know, I want to start to help connect communities to money, right? And so over the summer, I met with some people from the USDA at OSU, and we talked about, you know, low interest loans and grant opportunities through them. I mean, you guys are prime for USDA money, right? Because you're a rural community, you're in a persistent poverty county, and you have the presence of a tribal nation. And these are the types of communities that USDA really wants to work with.
Thank you so much for working on this. It's
Phenomenal. Yeah.
perspective.
Yeah, well, and it's fresh eyes, and these are like 20-somethings, 30-somethings, right? And so for small communities, these are the type of people you need to be attracting.
That was a really fun evening.
It was.
Could you turn the light on, please, if you don't? Yeah, the work that they did and the graphics that they did and the posters and everything that they had set up. And then we had a student at every table interacting. I kind of enjoyed the one where we sat down and colored and just visited.
Yeah.
I think I stayed there for 30 minutes.
It was a great conversation, though.
It was a
Yeah.
good conversation. It took off on a couple different directions, but it circled back to where we started. So it was great to hear from younger
Yeah.
people and what they thought. I
Yeah.
feel like they truly listened to our citizens in the things that we wrote down.
No, they were so excited. I mean, you know, these overnight trips, like some of them are married, some have young families, so you never know who's going to go. But everyone was like super excited to come, and we spent the night in Stillwater. And you know, OU is not as like it's a little like fancy, right? Like OSU is more for the people, so it's like we don't have $5 pitchers of beer in the line. So they really enjoyed that in Stillwater. But they just had such a good time, and you know, just like I can't stress enough, like anyone they came across in that community engagement event or on the street, like everyone was so warm and welcoming and just so willing to talk to them. Oh my gosh, they had a ball.
They also interacted together. It wasn't like Boomer Sooner and pew pew. It was they just all that was set aside, and it was like they came together for us.
Yeah.
For like our city and dreamed for us, like you said, with fresh eyes. It was a really good evening. So
Yeah, the director of their program and I are friends. We were in school together like a million years ago, so it's just crazy we both ended up in Oklahoma. But we really try to foster those connections. Because Bedlam is well, I guess it's not on the football field, you know, anymore, but, you know, we can support each other.
Thank you. It was.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys had any more questions. It was a really good evening, wasn't it, Bobby? It really was. I do wish more people would have come out. Mayor Schilling was there that evening as well, and then a few more other.
So the booklet will be coming in a few weeks, so you'll see a lot more projects as well.
Thank your students for us.
Absolutely, I sure will.
It was a good presentation too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So good to see you again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Tammy, we just move forward on this now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we're on 13.
13. Thank you again, Dr. Little.
Oh, yeah, I had a ball.
Safe trip home.
Thank you.
All right, number 13, consideration, discussion, and possible action to accept proposal from RCP Richards Construction LLC to repair and install concrete in a drainage easement on Fairway Drive at a cost of $7,200 utilizing American Rescue Act funds.
This is between the second and third house on Fairway on the south side. There's been water standing in the street forever. It was, it needs some work. So I got a quote to grade the area. There's not much slope. And if we grade it, because the soil moves so much, we'll have to regrade it in a year or two. That was $4,800. If we spend the money now, $7,200 to put concrete in, it should be easier to keep clean and should drain the water off of our street.
Okay. Commissioners? Questions?
I'll make a motion that we accept proposal from RCP Richards Construction LLC to repair and install concrete in a drainage easement on Fairway Drive at a cost of $7,200, utilizing American Rescue Man Act funds.
Second. Mayor?
Yes.
Vice Mayor?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes, ma'am.
14, consideration, discussion, and possible action to accept proposal from RCP Richards Construction LLC to repair and clean 7th Street and Thomas Street drainage ditch at the cost of $7,800 utilizing American Rescue Act funds.
This 7th and Thomas, we did some work adding rock to that drainage ditch after the concrete. This would finish it
We're going north or we're going?
north to the concrete. because it's eroding into private property.
It is.
We build that back out and should work a little better than what's there.
Are they gonna remove those trees that are on that erosion side?
Yes.
Okay, so all those trees will be gone? I drove by it the other day and it was like, I didn't realize it was eroding.
Yep.
So,
I used to drive by it every day.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
on your street.
Does it
Okay.
every time it rains.
Very much needed, I believe.
Yes.
Commissioners, anybody?
I'll make a motion to accept proposal from RCP Richards Construction LLC to repair and clean 7th Street and Thomas Street drainage ditch at a cost of $7,800 utilizing American Rescue Plan Act funds.
Go ahead.
I'll second.
Mayor,
Yes.
Vice Mayor,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Jason.
Yes, ma'am.
Number 15, consideration, discussion, and possible action to select American Signal Corporation as the vendor for storm sirens at a cost not to exceed $34,987.20, utilizing public safety sales tax as included in the capital improvement plan funding, subject to negotiation and approval of an acceptable agreement.
This is to, Eric's been working on this. This is to replace the storm siren that's behind Cafe 33 with a louder storm siren, since the golf course and ball fields are over that way. And it would also relocate the siren right behind the middle school up on the hill by the bus barn.
That was in one of his reports a few months back, I do believe, and I wish I could remember the page on the calendar.
And this vendor is a large corporation, did not want to negotiate their standard or move away from their standard contract terms until they've been awarded the contract. So we're asking you to award the contract subject to us then getting an acceptable.
So then you'll go
We'll
over.
bring back the agreement if we get an acceptable one, which I think we will.
So do you see any reason why you wouldn't?
I don't know. Eric and I just finished today drafting our proposed agreement to send to them, so. We usually work it out.
This isn't the same signal company that we've used for our city our lights in town.
No,
No.
no.
Different.
It's a different name, though.
Commissioners, do you have any questions or any more concerns?
A good plan.
I make a motion that we approve to select American Signal Corporation as the vendor for storm sirens at a cost not to exceed $34,987.20, utilizing the public safety sales tax as included in the capital improvement plan funding, subject to negotiation and approval of an acceptable agreement.
I'll second. Mayor,
Yes.
Vice Mayor,
Yes.
Sarah. Yes. Jason.
Yes, ma'am.
16, consideration, discussion, and possible action to review letters of interest and select candidate for Board of Adjustment to open position, terms ending June 30th, 2026.
There were 2 letters submitted. Mr. Aaron Ferguson, I believe he's here.
Okay.
And also Rhonda Jolliffe. They're in your packet.
Mr. Ferguson, would you like to say anything?
Unless you want me to.
It's totally up to you, sir. Okay.
He is an engineer, so this would be 100% in his wheelhouse.
So I read his letter. It's very impressive. So this would be a pass, and moving on to 17, unless any of the commissioners have anything to say. I did not mean to move forward without asking.
Thank you for volunteering.
Absolutely. Number 17, consideration, discussion, and possible action to appoint Aaron Ferguson to Board of Adjustment, open position, term ending June 30th, 2026. I make a motion that we appoint Aaron Ferguson to the Board of Adjustment, open position, term ending June 30th, 2026.
Second.
Mayor,
Yes.
Vice Mayor,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Jason.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you're in there for a while. We got you roped in there. Welcome, and thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Number 18, consideration, discussion, and possible action to appoint Rhonda Jolliffe to Board of Adjustment, open position, term ending June 30th, 2026.
I would recommend appointing her. She just wants to help.
She does. This will be her second board that she'd like to be on. I make a motion to appoint Rhonda Jolliffe to Board of Adjustment, open position, term ending June 30th, 2026.
I'll second.
Mayor,
Yes.
Vice Mayor,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Jason.
Yes, ma'am.
Number 19, new business. Under the Open Meeting Act, this agenda item is authorized only for matters not known about or which could not have been reasonably foreseen prior to the time of posting the agenda or any revised agenda. Yes. Number 20, I make a motion that we adjourn the City of Perkins regular meeting Tuesday, September 12th, 2023.
I'll second.
Mayor,
Yes.
Vice Mayor,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Jason.
Yes, ma'am.
You're always there for me.
I am pleased as punch for that one.
Yeah. I got it out that time before you seconded it.
I tried to train myself,
Timed.
but I really wanted
It was good timing. Okay. I can get to my next agenda. Amy, you ready? Perkins Public Works Authority agenda, regular meeting Tuesday, September 12th, 2023. Roll call to order, establish a quorum. We're here, but go ahead.
Mayor,
Yes.
Vice Mayor.
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Jason.
Yes, ma'am.
Justin is absent.
Number 2, consideration and action on consent agenda. Commissioners, you have anything you want to talk about?
No, thank you.
Make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Mayor,
Yes.
Vice Mayor,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Jason.
Yes, ma'am.
Number 4, public appearances, petitions, communications, and personal appearances under Oklahoma law. Perkins Public Works Authority board members are prohibited from discussing or taking any action on items not on today's agenda. Moving forward to number 5, consideration, discussion, and possible action regarding hydraulic analysis report of water system improvements presented by Aaron Mears, PE with Mears Engineering LLC.
Thank you.
Will you, sorry, be so formal. Will you tell us your name and address for Amy, for the record?
Yes, my name is Aaron Mears, address 7301 Northwest 158th Street, Edmond, Oklahoma, 73013.
Thank you, sir.
We'll be getting a new office October 1st, but I don't know the address yet. So.
Okay.
Apologize, a little thick. I hit print and the appendix is really thick. So there's a lot of data in there. I should have doubled it up, but I'll make sure to get it on the next one. Don't get intimidated. The first 20 pages are the report. The rest of it's just appendix. And the reason I add the data that I did in the appendix is when I present a report, I always like to provide the information that if anybody ever wants to recreate my data, they have all the raw data. So a lot of that is tables, raw data from your water usage reports, and a nice little fancy map, which is what I really am proud of. So. If you guys like to turn to the first page, introduction, planning area, this is kind of the boilerplate that is included in most engineering reports. When I build reports, hydraulic analysis, anything of that nature, I like to build off of it, so I don't like to recreate the wheel. Essentially, I was asked by Bob to look at the hydraulics of the system for possible funding for a new water tower and other deficiencies if they're in your system. and basically troubleshoot the system. So that's what this is about. If you look on page 3, this map kind of correlates with the map in the back, which is really the meat and potatoes of the hydraulic analysis. You guys had a lot of information to work with, which was great. So coming up with the model is probably pretty accurate. My models are as accurate as the information I have. So essentially the way that your system is laid out, from my understandings, is you have 4 elevated storage towers. You have 4 groundwater wells located on the north side of town. Well 1 and 2 from pressure information or well logs is really not being utilized right now for most days. So typically on most of your days, you're utilizing your Ampride well, which is located northwest of the city, town, and then your Sonic well. So these 2 wells provide most of the flow to the system. And then you have a hydraulic plane that's been created from the north side of I-33, or your Highway 33. So that's kind of how the system is laid out.
Is this our book?
Yes.
So I could highlight?
Yes, you can. You can mark it up.
I'm going to mark something while I decided not to.
Okay.
If you see any errors or if there's anything that's
I wasn't looking for
inconsistent,
errors, I was looking for my visuals.
just understand that this report is fluid, pun intended. So if we do have any issues, we will advise that to you.
Y'all
So
laughed?
mark it
You
up.
knew it was coming and you still laughed?
They did. They knew it was coming. My wife says you got to do the pause, or that people don't know you're doing a joke. So you can thank her if that actually landed.
Lead with a joke, babe, it'll be all right.
I'm an engineer, we don't do jokes. So what we want to do is when we're looking at any type of hydraulic analysis, at first we want to look at population growth trends, and we also want to correlate that with water usage. And so what this is going to do is it's going to provide a picture of where your system's going in the next 40 years. And when you do any type of infrastructure improvements, you always want to look and project the future, because any type of funding agencies, they require a design life 30 years, 40 years. They want that infrastructure to provide that design life that you're actually trying to get the money for. So what we do is I look at 2 different parameters. One, I look at your county population projection, and then I also look at water usage data. And from those 2 pieces of information, I can kind of roughly project what your water usage is going to be in the future. So that first population growth, you guys have about, in the county, in the 2020 census, you're about 0.84% growth per year and year currently, which is a pretty good tick. Now this doesn't take into consideration Perkins itself. This is county-wide, so we also have to take that in consideration. So what we're doing is we're going to take that information. We're also going to take your water usage reports to extrapolate what you're going to be looking at with water consumption. So with that said, on page 4, we took 36 months of water usage data that was graciously given to me by Bob, and we determined that in July, your average peak usage in July is about 8.2 million gallons. With that, we also want to take in consideration, when you get water usage reports, that's with a monthly average. So your water usage isn't going to be baseline. You're going to have fluctuations. So what I did is I added a peaking factor of about 1.8, and I guesstimated that your peak usage in the month of July, which is your peak month, is about 0.48 million gallons a day. So just kind of remember that number. So about 500,000 gallons a day is what you guys are using. So that's a really important number to remember. Now when we're looking at future growth, that's when we take into the consideration the 0.84% with a peaking factor of 0.18. You're looking at about 0.67 million gallons a day. So you're increasing your water usage about 200,000 gallons a day, and that's looking at population growth over the whole county. So I think the city of Perkins, actually, you have a little bit higher of a number when it comes to population growth. But we'll look at that in the preliminary engineering report phase. So the next is the existing facility. So this is when we start looking at the system itself. We want to look at how many water lines you have, what size they are, really do an audit of your overall system. And this is actually really good, helpful information for any type of auditing for, infrastructure, what you have and assets and things of that nature for insurance purposes. Another thing I like to look at is we guesstimate kind of what your total volume in the system. So when you're looking at water age, or you're looking at your cycling of your system when it comes to disinfection and disinfection byproducts, you don't only want to look at storage capacity in your towers. I also like to look at storage capacity in the lines. Now, you guys are a municipal system, so this doesn't really apply to you as much, but for rural systems, it plays much a larger consideration with respects to disinfection issues. You know, there's a lot of systems that their system itself is 3 to 4 times larger than their storage capacity. You know, they don't think about that until they actually get it on paper. So, but it's some useful information, so I thought I'd leave it in there. So. And then we want to look at water wells. So like I said, you guys have 4 water wells. And we determined, if you turn to page 6, well 1 and well 2 is pretty low flow. I mean, well 2 is 150 gallons a minute, which actually is not a low flow. And then we guesstimated with well log data that your sonic well can produce about 200 gallons a minute. Now the ampride well can also produce 200 gallons a minute. Maybe a little lower than that, but we wanted to be conservative, so we went ahead and left it at 200 gallons a minute. So when you're looking at a DEQ rating capacity, you remove one of your largest wells, and then you look at the capacity. So with one of those 200 gallon a minute wells removed, your DEQ rated capacity is about 500,000 gallons a day, which that means with that 0.48 million gallons a day, and then you got the 0.5 million gallons a day of capacity, you guys do not have a deficiency on your well capacity as of now. Now, if there is a considerable amount of growth, then you will. So right now, you guys are good on your well capacity. So then we want to look at water storage. So water storage, again, we want to look at daily demand. So your daily demand, again, is about 0.48. But actually, we look on, if you look at page 8, page 6 and 7, or page 7 is basically just the dimensions of the towers that you have on your system. And we looked at the Petosphere storage tower, which is your main storage tower that was built recently. It's about a 250,000 gallon tower. Then we looked at the Main Street tower, which is one of those turn of the century top hat, witch's hat. And there's a lot of different names for it. They're really nice. I mean, if people restore them, I really like them. So I'm glad you guys restored yours. It's really, really cool tower. And then we also looked at the existing standpipes, the Pogue tower and the Knipe tower. So we took all of those storage capacities, put it together. We looked at your total number of meters, and we multiplied 250 gallons per the meter. So your existing storage required would be 373,000 gallons with that number. And your existing capacity is 492,000 gallons storage capacity, which means you guys got more than enough storage capacity, so there is no deficiency as of now. Now, when you hit 2050, you zero out, and then 2063, you do have a deficiency. Now, this is looking way in the future. Again, we don't want to look at, when it comes to hydraulic analysis, it's like nailing jello to the wall. So I know I'm throwing different numbers out there, but there's ranges, and we want to look at different consistencies in the data is what we're really looking for. So, but with that said, you guys don't have a deficiency in storage capacity. Your existing system, when we look at the well log compared to your water usage, your water loss is not that bad. It's 15 to 25%, and what you'd like to get it down is about 10%. And I think actually looking at the data, I think you were trending down if I look at it correctly. But so you guys are not doing too bad with water loss, but you could get a little bit better. So then we get into the hydraulic modeling. So this is when we plugged in all your data, we put the water lines in, and we put all the demands in for all the meters, and we set up the model. So when we're looking at models, we're looking for 2 dynamics. We're looking for pressure, and we're looking for velocity. So when we set up the model and you look at some of these pictures, you'll notice that there's some red lines and there's orange lines. If those lines, those are for velocity. So any lines that you see that are orange, that means that line, when I ran the model, is over 2 feet per second velocity. That means the water's moving through there. Anything over 4 feet per second is red. Now when we get to red, that's when you start wanting to look at possibly upsizing the line or providing more lines for redundancy to alleviate the stress on those lines. Because what happens with velocity is the faster that water's moving through that pipe, it creates a vibration. And that vibration, the faster that velocity gets, the more violent that vibration gets, which I have seen water lines actually blow out of the ground. I mean, they can get really, really violent. So that's kind of the way that the system's set up. So then we also want to look at system demands. And in your model, we looked at if you go to page 11, that table there is the water usage for the last 3 years. So that's what we looked at to really determine a system demand per meter. And if you look at the top of there, kind of in bold, July is the highest usage month that you have. We averaged out the last 3 years, and then we break it down to a gallon a minute per meter with 1,492 meters, and we get about 0.12 gallons a minute per meter. Now again, we're looking at averages, so that's not how water systems behave. So we're going to have peaks and valleys. So we want to look at peaks. So what I did is I included a peaking factor of 4. So we take that, and so you're peaking with a peaking factor. You're looking at about half a gallon a minute. So what I did is I put a half a gallon a minute on all the meters throughout your system when I ran the model. When you have proposed demands, those are going to be 1 gallon a minute. So this is half of what is proposed. But when you're running an existing model, you're not looking at proposed improvements. You're trying to recreate what is existing. So that's the difference, and it's outlined here in the report. And again, when I was talking about hydraulic analysis, we're not trying to figure out a number. We're trying to figure out ranges. So what we do is I run simulations on your model to see where the vulnerabilities are, where the deficiencies are, where things need to be improved, and non-sustainable is the way I like to talk about it. So on your system, I ran 5 different scenarios. First, all of the scenarios I run a range in your tower. High water, low water. Your low water level in your tower is typically where you're most vulnerable. So with your system, I ran low water, high water with the pump off, because you turn your wells off because you want to make sure that your system's not running off of your wells or running off your towers. And then we want to look at your system with the wells on. So I ran high water, low water with the towers, with the wells on and the wells off. So that's what all these tables in the back are. It's all the data that correlates with that map that I have in the back as well. And then the 5th one is a fire flow analysis. So this is also required by DEQ to run a fire flow analysis. And I typically find the largest, most vulnerable building, which will either be a hospital or a school. With your situation, I ran the model at your high school. Or at the Tryon Perkins school. It's not at the south, on the north end, but it's kind of farther down. Over off at Kirk and Sadler. So over in that area.
The intermediate school?
Yeah, because that looks like, well, in the north of your system, I mean, you got a lot of volume up there. That's where all your wells are at. So you're not gonna really see much in the model. But over there at that school, you've got a lot of smaller lines. It's farther away from, the dynamic loading is farther away from your storage capacity. So we're gonna see a little more stress on the lines. So that's why I chose that area. And then now we're getting into the existing configuration and actually running the model. So your system stores, again, as I said, we want to state it at high water, low water range. Now if you turn to page 12, you'll see this little really cool graph. So what this graph is I actually had my field technician come out and he set a pressure logger at the base of your tower. Now when you look at the graph actually continued out much farther than this. It was about a week, I think is the data that we took, and it fluctuated between about 63 to 58 PSI in that tower. But then there was one day in July where the tower almost ran out. So that's what's that dip in there, is if it runs out. So that orange line and that green line represents the high water and the low water. So that's kind of showing you how the water is behaving in your tower, which I thought was really cool. And then I caught an anomaly in that week. So I don't know if you guys ran out of water. It might have been 4th of July. Were you guys doing fire flow testing that day?
No, probably, I don't know. I don't remember, but probably a leak or, I don't know.
Yeah, we could look at the exact date and find out when that is. So anyways, that's what that is talking about on page 12 is just your water tower. And another thing that I like to do is when you set these models up, you set the nodes on the ground elevation. Well, pipes are not on the ground, they're 4 feet under the ground. So what I do is I just raise my towers 4 feet. And that takes the consideration of that 4 feet of depth. So, and it talks about that in the report as well. System pumping, again, that goes back to your groundwater wells. System pressure and velocity, we talked about that. Now when you get into 14, now we're actually looking at the model. So this is when we're getting into pumps on and pumps off. So that first picture is when we're having the pumps on. So if you notice over on the left, on the west side of town, that red line coming from your Ampride well, if you're moving 200 gallons a minute through that 6-inch line, your velocities are exceeding 4 feet per second. So that would be considered a deficiency. Now when your wells are off, that's not an issue, which may not be an issue to you guys, but when this area starts to grow and they start to tie onto that 6-inch line, it's going to eat up capacity, it's going to eat up pressure, and if this line ever goes out, you have no redundancy.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Is that why we need to put that one new tower over on that side?
That would help, yes. And I think he'll get to it. But
Oh yeah, I'll get to that point.
upsizing lines and then upsizing lines coming out of the tower, but yes, with that would be redundancy in the storage and pressure. Because you get, he's talked a lot about storage, and I'm sure he'll get to it, but you also get your pressure off elevateds as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I would definitely recommend.
Want to. I mean, either off the well or the elevated, but.
You always want to get your pressure off the tower. So typically the way that ideally you want to run your system is the wells kick on at night when no one's using the system. That way you have no dynamic loading. It's more efficient to fill your towers up. And then whenever everybody wakes up, your wells kick off, and then all your system is run off of tower pressure. And it's much more consistent on the system. There's not as much water hammer. It's not experiencing as much stress when you're doing that. So that's why it's really important to have that storage capacity so that this line's not red during the middle of the day. You know what I mean? And if you do expand in that area, you know, people aren't going to be using it, but still, there's no redundancy on that well. So if anywhere on that line breaks, half of your capacity is gone. Now you do have 1 and 2, which means it'll kind of supplement that capacity. But I think even then you're going to have issues with pressure on the south end of your system.
It's got to go all the way around the system to come.
Yeah, yeah. Plus you have pressure reducing valves on the south end of the highway, which creates what I call a pressure plane. So the tower at the north end of your system is way taller than the rest of your towers. So you have to create a pressure plane. So what the system is doing is at each tie-in at your I-33, your 33 highway, there's a pressure reducer. So it's providing and maintaining higher pressures here, and it's lowering pressures over here, but it's also restricting flow. So you're restricting your velocity and your capacity with those reducers, but you need that pressure plane because the north end of your system wouldn't function without it. So that's why it's important. It's important to understand that on the system. Also, if you notice, there's an orange line coming from the Sonic well going through there. You know, because you have a lot of demand coming off of that orange line. So again, there's a pressure reducer up there too. So again, that goes back to that redundancy issues. And we'll talk about that later on. So then the next page, if you go to 15, this is where you're running with the tower. So if you notice, the red line goes away. Now that 6-inch line that I was just talking about that used to be orange, it turned red. So whenever your towers are running the system, the velocity exceeds 4 feet per second through that 6-inch line, kind of in the middle at the north end of the, I'll show you what I'm talking about. Oh, sorry. I thought you were looking around. So that one right there, and then also the lines on the north end of the system are orange because the tower is trying to feed your towers on the south end of the system. So those are the kind of the overall deficiencies that were noticed when running the model in normal peak usage steady state flow. Now we get into fire flow analysis. So when you run a fire flow analysis, you have to run extended period for 2 hours at 1,500 gallons a minute is your standard fire flow model flows that are set. Now, you cannot actually get 1,500 gallons a minute out of a fire hydrant, maybe in downtown Oklahoma City on a good day. So what I did is when I ran the model, I spaced it out on 3 different hydrants around the school at 500 gallons a minute per hydrant. So if you go to page 16, this is what happens to the system whenever you're experiencing a fire flow event. Now you are going to experience high velocities in lines. The red ones may be a little bit of an issue. Orange ones really is not an issue when you're running a fire flow analysis. And what's really important is there's not a lot of nodes that are going below the 25 PSI. So you're still maintaining pressure throughout your system. So you're not experiencing what I call catastrophic failure on the system, which is good. There are some areas that you are dropping below 25 PSI, but really there's no real concern until you get below negative. Because what happens when you have negative pressure on your lines is they start to collapse. So we don't want to have negative pressure. Health and safety, this talks about anywhere on the system that you don't have a 6-inch line, because 6 inches is the minimum size for fire flow. So if you have a line that's a 4-inch or smaller, and it's an area that's highly populated, that's an area you'd probably want to consider upsizing the line or providing redundancy with a 6-inch line in the immediate vicinity.
That's a lot of lines.
I'm sorry?
A lot of lines.
That's a lot of lines.
Yeah, tell my team that actually built the model. They had to build all that.
That's a lot of blue and green lines.
So finally, on page 17, conclusions and recommendations. Again, we're kind of rehashing the 25 PSI and the 2 feet per second, just a boilerplate recommendation. Also some additional recommendations requiring all proposed commercial, residential, industrial construction approval by the city engineer before construction, which you guys are already doing. Now, on the next point is something that I don't know if you have a procedure for this, or if you would want to vote for this, or how you would handle it. But what I have on Appendix C, if you go to Appendix C, now that I have your model, and again, I'm still going to do a little bit of calibration. Just reading this, I see a couple things I'd like to tweak on it, but nothing major. On Appendix C, I've got in there a water availability application. Somebody put this in here. I can't find it. Yeah, it's on the very back where the map's at. This is an application that I provide to all of my clients, and this is for anybody that's moving into the town of Perkins. So what you want to do when it comes to water system is you want to be proactive and not reactive. Now, I think you guys, the city of Perkins, are very well organized with this, and you probably already have something in place. But what this application does is any developer, anybody that wants to tie on, you give them this application, they fill it out, and it's $100 per meter or $300 for every 10 meters. So if a developer wants to put in 50 homes, they pay, 50, it's like $1,500 or something like that. They'll pay the city of Perkins, and then you'll send me this application. I'll put their development in my model, and I'll run it to determine if there's any adverse effects on your existing system. If there is, then we say disapprove with this stipulation. So what you're doing is you're establishing a situation where if somebody's going to tie on your line, they might have to improve your existing system for that to be approved. And so this is what that application does, is it provides proactive and not reactive with water usage and sustainability on your water system. So, and the final recommendations, again, as I said earlier, anything that's below a 6-inch line needs to be upsized for fire suppression if you want fire suppression in that area. And then I went into a little bit more specific, suggestions or recommendations on possible water line extensions or upsizing. So the first one is running a 6-inch line along the south edge of Highway 33 or 116th there. So if you look on page 18, it kind of shows you what happens when that well is kicked on. You see over there in the far left-hand corner, it's red. Well, then if you include that line on the north edge there, it turns those lines orange and not red. It also provides redundancy in the system so that if you have growth in this area, you've got multiple areas that you can tie onto, and if one line goes down, your whole system doesn't go down, because really that's your lifeblood to half of your water production is that 6-inch line. So it's pretty critical. Also, what I did is I included a 6-inch water line right there on that, I can't remember what the name of that street is.
Like Lover's Lane.
Yes, Lover's Lane. I shouldn't have remembered that. Lover's Lane. I remember that when I was in college. It's Lover's Lane in Stillwater too. So I added a 6-inch line there, so a highway bore. And what this is going to do is it's going to provide redundancy to the south end of the system. So that one line that used to be red right in the middle of the page, it's no longer red right now. It's orange above that pressure reducing valve, but that's given with how pressure reducing valves work. So with those improvements, the total construction would be anywhere from $300,000 to $350,000. Just a preliminary estimate. And there's different avenues that you can fund this. IHS is a great avenue. This is a deficiency, so I'd even maybe argue that DWSRF Principal Forgiveness Program, Loan Forgiveness Program could also be a possible avenue to improve any deficiencies in the system. And with my model, I proved that there are deficiencies. So that's what's really cool about having this is now you're eligible for funding because you had to have a hydraulic analysis done. Now, one thing to remember, DWSRF or CWSRF, which I'm sure you guys are probably already aware of this, you guys are categorized as a Tier 1 system, which is the most disadvantaged community in the state. So you're eligible for at least $1 million in DWSRF or CWSRF funding for any possible deficiencies on your water or your sewer system. The DWSRF is run through the ODEQ, CWSRF is run through OWRB. But what I want to talk about really is kind of what I've been talking to Bob about, and that's the expansion to the west side of your system, and that half section, specifically the half section that's just south of Highway 33. On that street, on the far west of, I believe that's where the hospital was wanting to go in?
Yes.
On Perkins Road. So we were discussing that there is a possible hospital that wants to go in on Perkins Road.
Well, the hospital would actually be next to the line that goes south, that's red, the 6-inch line,
Okay.
just between there and 33.
Okay. So that's kind of in the middle of that Twin Lakes area.
Yes.
Because looking at the growth trends of your system and just understanding how things, and talking to Bob really, he's really helped out a lot understanding the system. You're really looking at growing to the west there. So with a tower in that area and maybe some additional water lines, it would provide redundancy, it would provide the infrastructure that would be needed for growth in that area, which actually incentivize growth. When developers see infrastructure going out there, it actually increases the value of that land and it incentivizes growth. That and comprehensive plans are also another a good avenue for that. So with that said, I believe, yep. So another form of funding, again, Bob has been talking to the IHS for funding for the tower through the IHS. Another avenue, so the DWSRF and CWSRF are great for deficiencies, but they don't cover growth. Another funding agency that I'm actually using right now in the city of Lone Grove, they have a $4.2 million project down there. It's a composite 500,000 gallon composite tower. They're using EDA, economic development. They have a grant that is for growth. So CWSRF, DWSRF, that's kind of a HUD program. So they're more focused on housing. EDA is more focused on economic, commercial, industrial growth. So that is also another possible funding agency that we could look at for additional funding for any of the projects that's going on in this area. So with that said, does anybody have any questions for me? I know. She tells me I talk too fast.
Read this before I have questions.
Yes, it's a lot to absorb, and I try to get through it as best I can. And honestly,
Sponges.
Well, my objective is not to just get a report in front of you and whiz through it. I really want you to understand your system, and I really want you to understand the decisions that you're making when it comes to infrastructure.
Mission accomplished, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you.
Learned a lot. Any questions yet?
Totally impressed with you. Next time you come though, I'm gonna see if you can put your hands in your pocket and still talk.
Oh, do the hands?
No, I'm just messing with you.
You know, I learned that doing stand-up comedy, because when you talk, when you do comedy, and you don't move your hands, it makes people feel weird. But if you move in your hands,
You were a stand-up comedian, or you just learned that from TikTok?
no, I did stand-up before COVID, and then after COVID, I stopped doing it. Plus, I started, really getting into the work.
Is he lying?
Comic turned engineer?
Well, I was an engineer before.
That's very interesting.
It's just a hobby. It's just.
I'm an engineer, I'm not funny. You said that earlier.
Engineers can't do it.
For some reason, he can't tell that joke.
I'm a teacher, I caught you.
You did?
I did, I caught you. No, my goodness, this is a lot.
This is like the planning document. This opens up the state revolving fund monies he's talking about. This is what it's based on.
Right.
We use this to get that, and the Indian Health Service stuff is, we're getting ready to go through. I'm gonna go through a process.
This kind of opens the door to the next step for all involved.
And like if we ever get the tower project partnership off the ground, this will play a pivotal role in that. It's amazing. Thank you.
And really, the only thing I need is legal description, a tower location, and then we can go ahead and finish out the engineering.
So now instead of like, when you piecemeal developments like happens, if you have something like this before the developments, you can stop a lot of the issues that we're trying to fix retroactively now.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
And then the developers will tell us that we're against development and we don't want any growth and they can't make any money. That's just the reality.
Which I also do residential, and I do residential development and commercial site design, so I also know their side of the.
I'm the comedian too.
He is. Well, I appreciate it. If you guys don't have any questions, I'd like to step.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. Thanks for being his backup tonight.
This is my intern. This is the most qualified intern in the state. Also my mother, 25-year chemical engineer. She just retired. Now she works for me.
Congratulations.
They actually built the model. I just didn't take it part.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Very impressive. It's like you have a good team there. Okay, I would like to make a motion that we take a brief break. Request a break.
Do we need to direct staff to do something?
Yeah, do it.
Well, to say, if you wanted
This
to
is-
go ahead and move to enter an executive session. you know,
Was your
we'd have-
question
I'm
in
saying have a
reference
break
to
after
this,
you do that,
Sarah?
come back in here. Whatever it is.
Which question?
Do you need to direct staff to do something? Were you talking?
Right, or is it just a, number 5 is just
Kind of is what
information?
it is.
Have a good evening.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, safe trip.
Review for you.
All right, Tim,
Okay, thank you.
what were you saying?
As we say, if you wanted to go ahead and enter into executive session, we can take a break and they can all leave.
Okay.
And then we'll get cookies and go to work on executive session.
Did you bring cookies?
Executive session.
Yes.
I bring cookies.
Yeah, Dennis dropped the ball this week.
Unless Dennis does it for me, which he has.
Dennis has dropped the ball the past several, but
He has, hasn't
He didn't even know he picked up a ball. He was just being nice one day.
he? So,
What did
he's
you
not
feel?
very good at playing catch.
should have known.
All right. Number 6, I make a motion to enter executive session pursuant 25 OS 307E.4 to discuss the Perkins Public Works Authority claims and possible litigation against Ferguson Enterprises Incorporated and Mueller Systems LLC regarding the city's automated meter reading system.
I'll second.
Yes.
Yes. Sarah?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Turn the recorder off.
Take a break and we'll come back for executive session.
That needs to be shut off.
Yeah. I have to go to the bathroom too.
It's on recording now, Tammy.
I bet Spencer will eat it.
So, number 7 of the Perkins Public Works Authority, meeting for Tuesday, September 12th, 2023. Number 7, motion to exit executive session and reconvene in open session.
1 second.
Mayor?
Yes.
Vice Mayor?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes, ma'am.
Number 8, consideration, discussion, and possible action as a result of executive session regarding the Perkins Public Works Authority claims and possible litigation against Ferguson Enterprises Incorporated and Mueller Systems LLC regarding the city's automated meter reading system. Do you want to do it or you want me to? You got it right now.
I got it written down.
Go ahead.
I make a motion to direct city attorney to proceed as discussed.
I second.
Mayor?
Yes.
Vice Mayor?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes, ma'am.
Number 9, new business under the Open Meeting Act. This agenda item is authorized only for matters not known about or which could not have been reasonably foreseen prior to the time of posting the agenda or any revised agenda. Number 10, I make a motion that we adjourn tonight's Perkins Public Works Authority regular meeting Tuesday, September 12th, 2023.
I'll second.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, guys.
Mayor?
Yes.
Vice Mayor?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes, ma'am.
And get off here.